evening and welcome. I'm Karen Sullivan, publisher of Orenda Books, and I'm delighted to welcome you to another episode of Orenda Books at Bedtime. Tonight, we'll be hearing from Wes Camel, reading from his beautiful debut novel, Attend. For those of you who don't know, Wes Camel is in fact an editor at Orenda Books, and he put this into the submissions pile under another name. Both our first reader, and I loved it, and were very surprised to discover that it was his work. Well, not that surprised. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about it. It's set in Deptford. When Sam falls in love with South London thug Derek, and Anne's best friend Kathleen takes her own life, they discover they're linked not just by a world of drugs and revenge, they also share the friendship of the uncanny and enigmatic Deborah. Seamstress, sailor, storyteller, and self-proclaimed centenarian immortal, Deborah slowly reveals to Anne and Sam her improbable, fantastical life, the mysterious world that lies beneath their feet, and, ultimately, the solution to their crises. With echoes of Armistead Maupin and a hint of magic realism, Attend is a beautifully written, darkly funny, mesmerizingly emotive, and deliciously told debut novel, rich in finely wrought characters that you will never, ever forget. And now, over to Wes Camel, reading from Attend.
The beach was clearly in the middle of things. A metallic chime drifted across the water from a half-built tower on the Isle of Dogs. A pleasure cruiser rumbled upstream from Greenwich. But Anne had the sensation she was somewhere remote. The sheet of pale grey sky, the transparent blanket of river air. It was soothing. She approached the waterline and laughed out loud when it came to meet her, the bow wave from the cruiser pushing between the stones and slipping under her shoes. A faint flapping made her look up. She was expecting to see a bird, a heron, or a large gull, but it was a boat. She had seen dinghies on the river before, small families of identical craft, but this one was different. The sail was squarer, and the boat was alone. It passed her some way out in the stream, the sailor hidden by the sail. But then the sail shuddered, and the boat turned and came back towards her, closer to the shore. She could see now that it had an old wooden hull and a beam attached to the mast, from which the sail hung. The boat passed her and turned again, coming still closer, and now she could see who the sailor was. Until then, the boat had seemed delicate and vulnerable on the breadth of the Thames, but now it seemed cumbersome and wilful. That tiny woman, out alone in that great clunking thing. Unbelievable, Anne murmured, confounded. Deborah's voice arrived across the water. Wait there, Anne. I'll land. She ducked, and the sail began a loud flapping and shaking, which died as she brought it down. The boat continued moving until its nose ground into the shingle a yard from where Anne stood. Deborah climbed out, getting her feet wet, and hauled the boat in with a strong tug on a rope, then stood with it coiled around her arm, smiling benignly. Well, Anne, it's rare I see people on this beach these days. And I'd never have had you down as a sailor. I've just been fishing, look. I've been very lucky today. Deborah leaned into the boat and brought out a net containing several gleaming bodies. I haven't caught so many in ever such a long time. I'll have to dry some. Sailing, catching fish, drying them. Anne supposed they were everyday things to do. But here, in Deptford, in the 21st century... Deborah dropped the fish back into the boat. In fact, I must get them home before they turn. It's not so cool today. Would you like to come with me? Her look was suddenly searching. It's near. What? In the boat, said Anne, knowing it was obvious. It was exactly the kind of thing she should not do. She had vowed to make safe choices. But part of her yearned to be out on the water. She looked at Deborah, who had bent over the side of the boat again and was fiddling with the fish. She seemed capable, assured. Anne rubbed the small of her back where the ache had been that morning, and almost wished that the gate to the alley would clang and her social worker, her drugs counsellor, her mother, anyone, would appear at the top of the steps ordering her to get off the beach and go home. All right, yeah, I'll come. Her body reacted as it did to a hit. She felt she needed a cigarette or a Valium to blunt the edge. "Help me push him into the water then," said Deborah, "and jump in when he floats." The effort tested muscles Anne rarely used, and the stretch to get one leg in the boat and swing the other over was almost unnatural. And then the bobbing as she lowered herself onto a seat. Her heart fluttered excitedly. She had forgotten the small joy of floating. "Aren't boats always called she?" she asked, as Deborah pulled a few strokes with the oars to get them away from the shore. "Mine's a boy." Deborah giggled throatily. "Now, we have to move across sometimes, so just do it when I do, and duck your head when I tell you, or you'll be hit by the boom." Anne almost leaped into the water when she realised she couldn't just cling to the sides, but it was too late. Deborah was standing up near the mast, her feet wide. "Move into the middle of the seat to balance me." Anne slid out of her corner, and Deborah made a few quick movements with the ropes, which briefly caught around her body and seemed to bind her to the mast. Then she lowered her small grey bulk, and the sail began to rise. Even before it was fully hoist, the wind found it and swelled out the creases. Deborah took her place to steer as the boat began to move. She'd only just become used to the sliding movement when Deborah called out, "We're going about, so duck under the sail and get over onto the other side. Now." For a moment all was flux. The sail flapped loudly, the boat jerked, Anne scrambled across, head ducked, surviving. And already they were moving smoothly again. Now they were further from the shore, they moved faster. She was instantly stunned at their speed. She grasped the gunwale tighter. The sudden scare triggered that body-wide tingle that always accompanied her first fix of the day, but the tautness in her face, the detachment of her body, were from their quickening movement through the air. They were being pulled by an invisible ship, skipping about in its wake.
That was gorgeous. Thanks, West. We'll see you next Sunday for another episode of Orenda Books at Bedtime, 8 p.m. Don't miss it.